I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I just stood there in my graduation gown, holding my diploma, while my mother looked at it the way you'd look at a parking ticket. "Your brother got into UBC med school," she said. "Just thought you should know." That was it. No hug. No photo. My father had already walked back to the car. I was 22 years old, holding a Bachelor of Commerce degree from the University of Calgary with a 3.9 gigapascals, and the most important people in my life had already moved on to a more interesting topic. I tucked the diploma under my arm and walked to the parking lot alone. I didn't cry until I was on the C train heading back to my apartment, and even then it was quiet. Just tears running down my face while I stared at my own reflection in the dark window. I had learned a long time ago that loud feelings didn't help in my family. They only gave people ammunition. Growing up, my brother had been the one who mattered. Not in the subtle, unspoken way that sometimes happens in families. It was stated plainly, regularly, like a fact of the weather. My brother was going to be a doctor. My brother won the science fair. My brother got the highest mark in the province on his grade 12 biology exam. These things were announced at dinner, framed in the hallway, brought up at family gatherings in front of aunts and cousins who nodded and smiled and looked at me with that particular expression I came to recognize as pity dressed up as politeness. I was not unintelligent. I knew that about myself, even when I was young, even when no one else seemed to notice. I got good grades. I worked part-time through high school and saved every dollar. I was organized in a way that felt less like a personality trait and more like a survival mechanism. If I could control my own small world, the bigger one felt less chaotic. I kept a notebook where I tracked every expense, every shift worked, every dollar saved. My parents thought it was a quirk, something almost embarrassing, like I was compensating. Maybe I was. But it was also the thing that saved me later. My brother's name is Daniel. He is 3 years older than me, and for most of my life, I loved him genuinely. I don't think he was cruel on purpose. He existed inside the structure our parents built, and that structure placed him at the center. He got the bigger bedroom. He got the resp that was fully funded. He got the car on his 16th birthday. When I turned 16, my father handed me a bus pass and said the city transit system built character. I took that bus pass, and I used it to get to my part-time job at a grocery store in our neighborhood in Mississauga, where I worked 20 hours a week through the rest of high school and saved $14,000 by the time I graduated. I applied to university on my own. I researched scholarships on my own. I filled out the OSAP application on my own and did not ask my parents for help. Because I had watched my brother's education be used as a leash, my parents held the money. And that meant they held the direction of his life too. I did not want that. The University of Calgary offered me a partial entrance scholarship. I packed 2 suitcases, and I moved west at 18, and I did not look back. My parents seemed more confused than upset. I think they assumed I would fail and come home. When I didn't, they simply adjusted their story. In the version they told relatives, I had gone to a business school out west, which was technically accurate but delivered with a tone that made it sound like something between a trade certificate and a bad decision. I called home every 2 weeks for the first year, then once a month, then on holidays. The conversations were the same. My mother would update me on Daniel. My father would ask if I was eating enough. Neither of them asked about my courses, my friends, my plans. When I told them I had made Dean's List, my mother said that was nice, and then told me Daniel had passed his MCAT. After my graduation, where my diploma received the same energy as a parking ticket, I went back to Calgary, accepted a junior financial analyst position at a mid-size firm, and started building a life that had nothing to do with being compared to anyone. I was deliberate about money in a way that people sometimes found strange. I contributed to my RRSP from my first paycheck. I built an emergency fund. I tracked my net worth in a spreadsheet updated every month. Within 3 years, I had paid off my student line of credit completely. By 27, I had a down payment saved for a condo in the Beltline neighborhood, $68,000, which I had accumulated while also living my actual life. I was not miserable. I had friends, a social life, a gym membership I actually used. I had just never stopped being the girl on the bus with the notebook. I did not tell my parents any of this, not because I was hiding it, because they never asked. Contact had dwindled to a few texts around Christmas and birthdays by the time I turned 28. I was not angry anymore. That part had burned out somewhere around year 4. What remained was something quieter, a kind of indifference that I had made peace with. They had the son they wanted. I had the life I had built. These things did not have to intersect. Then my father called on a Tuesday night in March. I almost didn't answer. I was in the middle of reviewing a client file, and his name on my screen felt out of place, like getting a letter from a company you haven't thought about in years. I picked up. "Sarah." He sounded older. That was the first thing I noticed. "We need to talk." He told me my mother had been diagnosed with a heart condition, that she needed a procedure not emergency, but important, and the waiting list through OHIP was 14 months long. There was a private cardiology clinic in Toronto that could see her in 6 weeks. The cost was $22,000. "We've been trying to manage," he said, "but things have been tight." I asked about Daniel. There was a pause that told me everything before he said a word. "Daniel has had some difficulties," my father said carefully. "He's been dealing with some personal issues. He's not in a position to help right now." I asked what kind of personal issues. Another pause. "Financial. He made some poor decisions." I did not ask more. I said I would think about it and call back. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time after that call. I opened my spreadsheet. I looked at the number in my savings account. I thought about my mother, who had never once told me she was proud of me, but who had also, to be fair, made my lunches every day until I was 17 and driven me to the emergency room without complaint when I broke my wrist in grade 8. I thought about the fact that $22,000 was real money, not nothing, but also not catastrophic for me the way it apparently was for them. I called my father back the next day and said I needed documentation. The clinic name, the procedure details, the cost estimate in writing. I was not going to transfer $22,000 based on a phone call. My father sounded briefly offended, then agreed. The documents arrived by email 3 days later. The clinic was real. The procedure was real. The cost was real. I looked everything over, verified the clinic's registration with the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario, and then I called the clinic directly to confirm the appointment existed under my mother's name. It did. I transferred the money. I did not hear from my parents for 11 days after that. No confirmation the appointment had been kept. No update on how my mother was doing. Nothing. I sent 2 texts. I called once and got voicemail. On the 12th day, I sent a message that said simply, "Please confirm the procedure went ahead. I need to know she's okay." My mother replied 4 hours later, "Everything went fine. Thank you." That was it. I put my phone down and stared at the ceiling of my condo for a while. I told myself it was enough. She was okay. That was what mattered. I had done the right thing. I almost believed it. 6 weeks later, a woman rang my buzzer on a Saturday afternoon. I checked the intercom camera and saw someone I almost didn't recognize, older, tired-looking, with a coat I vaguely remembered from years ago. It was my sister-in-law, Claire, Daniel's wife. I had met her twice, once at their wedding, which I had attended and which my parents had managed to make awkward by seating me at the table farthest from the family. Once at a Christmas gathering 4 years ago, briefly, before I left early. She had seemed kind both times. Quiet. A little overwhelmed by my family's particular atmosphere. Il était in. She sat at my kitchen table with her hands wrapped around the tea I made her, and she said, "I'm sorry to just show up. I didn't know how else to do this." I told her it was fine and waited. "Daniel doesn't know I'm here," she said. "He would be angry if he knew. But I've been sitting on this for 2 months, and I can't anymore." What she told me over the next 40 minutes rearranged everything I thought I understood. Daniel had not been dealing with general financial difficulties. He had developed a serious gambling problem over the past 3 years: online poker, sports betting, eventually a pattern that had drained their joint savings account, maxed out 2 credit cards, and resulted in a $40,000 loan from my parents that had never been repaid. My parents had been quietly subsidizing Daniel's life while his situation deteriorated. They had remortgaged a portion of their home equity to cover some of it. By the time my mother's heart condition came up, they were genuinely stretched. I absorbed this slowly. So the $22,000 I sent. I don't know exactly where it went, Claire said. She looked at the table. I know the clinic appointment happened. I know your mother had the procedure, but I also know that $22,000 wasn't the only debt they had. And I know Daniel called your father 2 weeks after you transferred the money asking for another $8,000. I was quiet for a moment. Did they give it to him? She pressed her lips together. I don't know. I asked her why she was telling me this. She looked up then, and what I saw on her face was not guilt exactly, it was exhaustion. The kind that comes from carrying something heavy for too long. Because they're going to call you again, she said. I've heard them talk about it. Your father said you came through, and that you were more reasonable than expected. They think they can come back to you. She paused. And because I think you deserve to know what you walked into. After Claire left, I sat in my condo for a long time without moving. My tea went cold. The light outside shifted from afternoon to evening. I was not devastated. That surprised me a little. What I felt was something closer to clarity, the particular feeling of a fog lifting, that you had been living in so long you had stopped noticing it. All those years of being the one who didn't matter, the one who went west, the one who managed fine on her own, it had never occurred to me that my absence had been convenient for them. That the daughter who asked for nothing was valuable precisely because she could give something when needed, without the complications that came with Daniel's entanglement in their finances. I had been the backup account, just never told. I opened my laptop and spent the weekend doing what I had always done when things felt unmanageable. I made a document. I listed everything I knew. The $22,000 transfer, the dates of contact, the clinic information I had verified, the things Claire had told me. I did not have proof of where the money had gone after I sent it. But I had the paper trail of everything up to that point, and I had my own bank records. I also called the clinic on Monday morning. I told them I was following up on behalf of a family member and asked whether the balance for the procedure had been paid in full. After some back and forth about privacy, they confirmed that the account had been settled, and there was no outstanding balance. My mother's procedure had cost $22,000. The account was settled, so the money had gone where it was supposed to go. That mattered. It changed the shape of things. What I had was not fraud, exactly. What I had was a family that had told me a partial truth to get money I would not otherwise have given, had taken that money, used it for its stated purpose, and then failed to acknowledge me adequately afterward while simultaneously planning to ask again. That was not a crime. It was just my family. I thought about that for a long time. My father called again on a Thursday evening, 5 weeks after Claire's visit. His tone was the same as before, careful, a little strained. The particular voice he used when he wanted something, but was trying to frame it as conversation. Your mother is recovering well, he said. We're grateful for what you did, Sarah. Truly. I said I was glad to hear it. Things are still a bit difficult, he said. There were some follow-up costs we hadn't anticipated, and Daniel is going through a rough patch. We were wondering if you might be able to help again, just a short-term thing. We'd pay you back. I let the silence sit for a moment. Then I said, Dad, I need to ask you something directly, and I need you to answer me honestly. He said, of course. Did any part of the $22,000 I sent go toward Daniel's debts? A pause. Longer than it should have been. The money went to your mother's procedure. Like we said. I know, I said. I confirmed that with the clinic. That's not what I asked. I asked if any of it or any money it freed up went toward Daniel. Another pause. We have a lot of expenses, Sarah. It's not as simple as, Dad. I kept my voice even. I know about the $40,000. I know about the loan. I know about the remortgage. I'm not angry. But I need you to understand that I'm not going to be a source of ongoing financial support, and I'm not going to be approached through a side door. If you had told me the full situation, I might have made the same decision. I don't know. But I deserve to know the full situation. He was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, smaller somehow. We didn't want to burden you with everything. You didn't want me to say no, I said gently. Those are different things. He didn't argue. That was the most honest moment we had ever had. I told him I was glad my mother was recovering. I told him I cared about both of them. I told him I would not be sending more money, and that if there was a genuine emergency in the future, I expected to be given complete information and the choice to decide freely. I told him I thought Daniel needed professional help for the gambling, and that enabling the problem wasn't the same as helping him. My father said he understood. I'm not sure he did, but I think some part of him heard it. I reached out to Claire the following week. I sent her a message that said only, "Thank you for telling me. I hope things get easier for you. You deserve support too." She replied an hour later, "Thank you for not making it harder than it already is." We have texted occasionally since then. She found a therapist. Daniel is in an outpatient program for problem gambling. My parents are managing. I don't know the details because I am not the person they call for details anymore. I had one clear conversation with my father in which I drew a line, and they have, so far, respected it. I still track my finances every month. I still update my net worth spreadsheet. I still make decisions carefully, methodically, the way I learned to do on a bus in Mississauga when I was 16 years old, with a part-time job and a notebook, and no one particularly paying attention. My RRSP is healthy. My condo has appreciated $60,000 since I bought it. I have 3 months of expenses in a TFSA, and a 5-year plan I feel good about. And I have something else now that I didn't have before, not exactly peace, because I don't think my family will ever give me the kind of recognition I used to want from them, but something more stable than peace, a settled sense of my own worth that doesn't require their input. I am not the child they compared favorably. I am not the one whose photo is in the hallway, or whose acceptance letter went on the fridge, or whose name was said at family dinners with that particular tone of pride. But I am the one who knew, at 22, to save her money. I am the one who verified the clinic. I am the one who asked the hard question on the phone instead of swallowing it. I am the one who, when someone finally sat across from me at my kitchen table and told me the truth, was steady enough to hear it. That has to count for something. I think it counts for quite a lot.